Greetings. Welcome to actually the first section of the Six Sigma method, and the first one is define. And your presentation should have that right in the heading, define, and your paper also should have that heading, define. So that's very clear, so the instructor knows you addressed define thoroughly. So what is define? Define is to be able to identify a problem, right? There has to be some type of problem you're going after. There has to be some deficiency, some inefficiency, some type of issue, whether it's in process, throughput, the performance, typically, time, the time that it takes to complete task X is way out of control. So it's one of those things that really can set the organization back financially, and if solved, it can move it forward, and again, it would be able to make more money as a result by reducing its operating costs by a certain amount. My preference in all cases is to tie this define, this problem, not just to a financial aspect, but try to generalize that so it has some other type of benefit. Like, for example, if you're reducing the amount of materials in a process in manufacturing, right? You're going to be more efficient in what you're doing. You're going to reintroduce materials back into the production cycle, make it less expensive to get that product out the door, less steps along the way. You know, what you're doing also is saving materials, and then also could be measured in its impact on the natural environment, right? And so you can always engage in some type of problem that satisfies, that answers or solves the problem in a way that is beyond just finance. It may be some type of social impact that's tied to this financial measure that you're going to be going into in the next section, and how you do measure these units when you do define a problem. Working on some of the projects in the past, I've seen work order systems, for example, the time that it takes to complete a work order. There's one project I engaged in, and it wound up being from $670 per work order all the way down to $127 per work order. Over 3 years this project took. Of course, it might not be that dramatic, and there were thousands of work orders, so it amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. But those are the typical things. Say if you're implementing a software package, a work order system, to document people's time that it takes to perform a variety of tasks, it's pretty easy to see the mean time that would take to complete these tasks or to do some type of process. So that would be defining your problem, to be able to get that under control, right? Others were worked with one in a large manufacturing company, Bucyrus, and it was saved $500,000 in rags, believe it or not. And I was amazed at this. Some had to do with software licensing, having way too many licenses floating around an organization where nobody even uses that software that is being paid for by that organization, and then tightening up on those licenses, those seats throughout the organization, a couple $100,000 in the project that was involving that. So in defining, you have to really kind of look around, what are those problems? But typically in organizations, you have an idea. You have these things that you're thinking, this could be done so much easier, this could be done so much better. We've got this process, and it's like spaghetti. It's all over the place. If we could just streamline this, there's all kinds of ways in order to reduce the operating costs and increase revenue, of course, as a result, in organizations. But the first things first, to be able to define what that is. Now, in the paper on the define, you give some background. Why did you select this problem? What's the background to this problem? What are some suspicions you might have about this problem? You speculate about that. But at the end of this section of your paper and presentation, you're going to be very clear about what that problem is. And so in the next video, we'll go into some specific measures that you can look at. So that would be the units. So again, be creative. You can think about Concordia University, Wisconsin, and some problems that might exist. I heard, for example, that in the dorms there's no low flow faucets, right? But in other parts of the university there are low flow faucets. So by implementing low flow faucets, how much would it cost to install those low flow faucets, and what would be the return on that in reduced water use? Fantastic problem that exists. Occupancy sensors in the corridors. There's all kinds of things. Admissions. Are there too many steps in the process? Is it alienating the students and parents as they come in? Is it a nice, clean flow? Do we do all the work for the people who are coming in to go through the admissions process, rather than putting the onus back on them and then they back off? Diversity of Concordia University. What is the diversity of, say, the day students, for example, and how could that problem be solved? And you would increase, perhaps, the amount of students that are at Concordia University. So there's these kinds of issues, we call it define, these issues floating around organizations all over the place, whether you're at Johnson Controls, whether you're at Miller or Harley Davidson, or any of the businesses that are out here, especially large ones. These kinds of projects are launched every day. So again, the define, right? This section is on define. So think about that, and then present your idea to your instructor. And then your instructor will give you some guidance on whether this is doable, or will you have to do an estimate of the results at the end. Remember, some projects will take longer than 6 weeks. So then you may have to estimate what that return will be. So on the next video, we'll get into the specific units of measure.